Hi folks, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today I am back to embark yet again on this activity of actually reading my TBR, which apparently I'm not very good at doing. Very odd considering my completionist nature. However, I am a person who makes lists of books I want to read and then forgets I made said list because I get excited by other books that I come across. So I don't know why I keep making TBR lists, but I made a 23 books in 2023 list, which I still haven't read. And despite that, I made a 24 books in 2024 list of books I want to read. Now, some of these I think I'm probably just like not really interested in reading anymore. So some of the books I actually don't want to read, but there's still quite many on this list that I have not yet read that I do still want to read. And I am going to be reading some of these this week because I should at least try to accomplish my goals before the end of the year, even if it's definitely not going to happen fully. So here we are. I am about to head off to work. Naturally, I should probably speed things up. I am going to be starting Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister today. I got this on a Libby loan, and I'm very excited to read it. If you've been around my channel for a while, you may know that Gillian McAllister's book, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, was one of, if not the favorite book of mine that I read last year. And so I'm very excited to get my little fingies on Just Another Missing Person. I'm intrigued to see how her writing is in a mystery thriller that is not time travel related. Well, kind of time travel. It's not like time manipulation, I guess, related. I'm very intrigued to read this. I'm going to be starting it today. I'll let you know my thoughts once I am a little bit of a way through. But it's now November. It's feeling cozy autumn vibes. It's going to get cold again. I feel like mystery thriller is like it's the right time of year for it. So I'm going to start reading this. I will hopefully read it quite quickly because I am in love with it. That's the ultimate goal. And then I'll pick which book I will read after that. I have a couple in mind that I might like to read soon, but it depends on timing. So we'll decide that when the time comes. I'm going to start reading Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister, and then I will come back to you with my initial thoughts, okay? So I have now read about 40% of Just Another Missing Person, and I am liking it so far, but I'm not liking it as much as I thought I would. There is basically the story we're following is Julia, who is a police officer detective, and this girl, Olivia, she's not really a girl, she's like 20, goes missing, and Julia is the lead on the case trying to find her, but then Julia's personal life and history kind of comes back to her, and the plot ensues. That's as vague as I can make it. That in itself, is interesting. I'm liking the fact that it seems like this book does have, parts, so I'm partway through part 1 right now, but inside part 1, there's then the timeline is explained, so it'll be first day missing, and then you'll have a bunch of chapters, and then second day missing, so on and so forth. So the timeline is really clear, which I like. The one thing I'm finding difficult is some of the POVs. So the main POV is Julia, and that is in third person, but then there are these POVs of Lewis and Emma, which I found quite confusing when they first introduced, because you just get the POVs of these characters that you've never met before, and it's just suddenly you're thrown into whatever is happening in their head at that moment. But also it's first person because they're using I and stuff, but it's the POV of them speaking their thoughts about another person. So it'll be I see you do this, and I tell you to blah, 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 blah. And I'm just finding that to be a difficult POV style to read. I'm not necessarily loving that. I feel it's supposed to kind of create a different atmosphere for those sections to kind of make them more eerie and uncertain because they're so personal. It is definitely a way to avoid naming certain characters to keep certain things secret when, they're just being referred to as you, so you can keep that identity kind of hidden and obscured for you to guess until the point when the author wants to reveal it, which is kind of how like the first POV of both those characters went. Again, I don't necessarily like hate it. It's just like not something that I'm finding very easy to read and I'm not necessarily liking. I think I almost would prefer more if we were just like continuing on with Julia's point of view, but that might change for me. There is also like POV chapters that they're called like Olivia, but they're not really POV because they're just like records of her Instagram posts or tweets or emails and stuff. And I'm not quite exactly sure what those chapters are supposed to be doing. Like, I'm not really sure what their function is because it just appears to be like random posts. It doesn't seem to be related really to like what is happening in the plot and like leading you somewhere with the mystery. So I'm like a little confused about that. That's like my main thoughts. I do also find this is like very of the time it was written. I believe this came out in 2023 or earlier this year. It's like a fairly recent book and it's very obvious. I really don't think this is a book that's going to age well because it references very niche current events and things. Like it talks about like TikTok specifically a lot, and there's certain like culture, I can't remember what it was, but I remember reading this one like cultural reference and I was like, oh, nobody in like 10 years is going to remember that reference. So that's just like interesting to me because like I feel like writing a book, even if it's obviously taking place in like present day, you know, there's certain things like social media in general that is relevant to have present, you know, like with mobile phones and the internet and all of that kind of thing. But to have these like very specific cultural references really like pinpoints a timeline for it and does not make a book timeless. And I find that kind of odd because I feel like you would want your book to be timeless, but maybe Gillian McAllister actually wanted this book to be like a very exact time capsule of a certain time period of 2022, 2023. But that just kind of came off as odd to me. But those are my thoughts. I am liking it so far. I feel like for 40% of the way through, I'm maybe like just kind of sitting at like a 3-star. I feel very like middle of the field about it so far. But what I recently read like last night, I was starting to get quite more intrigued. Like something was like revealed that made things much more complex with what's going on now to make you question things. So I'm quite happy now to be reading more, and I'll let you know when I have another update because you already know I have to get the work. So I've read a lot more of the book. I'm now, I think, about like 3/4 of the way through. Literally like immediately after my last check-in, I started reading again and then like could not stop because things just picked up like crazy. Because I think my last check-in was like at about 40%. It's not like I wasn't interested in it at all up until 40%. I was intrigued and I was liking it, but I wasn't like absolutely hooked yet. And then I got hooked. And things have just been slowly revealing themselves. And I have to say, like, the way Gillian McAllister has twists in her books is amazing. It was something where you're reading it and you're feeling a certain way, but you can't quite put together what it is that is off. And then she like just slowly, the hints of it, and you realize it, and then you're like, oh my god, that's what's happening. Yeah, I've been absolutely like loving it right now. Where I just put it down at 2, like there was just like a reveal that I'm like, oh my god, what is going on? Like things just got even more complex somehow, and I don't even know how that happened because this book is already like a lot happening, but like in a good way. It's definitely gone way up in my likability since the last time I was talking about this book. So I think like kind of took me a bit of time to warm up to it, mostly because of the confusion I was feeling around the POVs. But now that I'm like really in it fully, I have absolutely no issues with the POVs anymore. I'm actually liking some of those POVs that I previously was not. And just like I really want to finish reading this book, but I have to go to work. So I can't finish reading the book until later. But I'm going to finish reading the book and then I'll let you know my final thoughts. But right now, I want to say like this is definitely like 4-star. I'm not loving it as much as I loved Wrong Place, Wrong Time. But also like if the ending of this book is amazing, like who knows? sky's the limit. It could happen. I'll check back in with you once I am finished Just Another Missing Person. I finished reading Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister last night, and I really ended up loving this book. I think I'm going to settle on a 4-star rating just because I feel like I didn't get into it for a little bit, and the ending, I didn't dislike the ending, but I kind of wish it went a bit further into the details of the twist reveal. Everything was very obvious. It's not like there was anything left to question, but I feel like, I don't know, just the way that it came to be fell a little flat for me. It was still overall like a satisfying ending to the book, but yeah, I just kind of wish it was a bit more. So it's definitely not an absolutely favorite read like Wrong Place, Wrong Time was for me, but I will say, like, I'm a big fan of Gillian McAllister mystery thriller books. I think like the way that she has her twists and her reveals, I feel like they're very unique, and they're always something that you sense something coming, but like can never quite put your finger on what it is, and then it like comes to you. It's like her reveals come like a wave, you know, like it's not a sudden thing. It's like it kind of creeps up and then you slowly realize, and I really love that aspect of her writing. I would definitely suggest reading Just Another Missing Person, a very good book. Yeah, just like a really good book. I like her writing, I like her twists, I like the mystery. It was like the right amount of tension for me. Sometimes when things are like too tense and too suspenseful, I like emotionally cannot handle it and need to put a book down or like stop watching a show. So I like a good balance, and I feel like this had that. It had a very well moving plot, and you know, like I almost had the ending, but I didn't quite. I almost figured it out, but I didn't. But I kind of like that. I kind of like when I'm surprised. I'm going to be heading to work. When am I not heading to work? It's November. Like 8 o'clock in the morning is the only time I have light anymore to film. But I'm going to be starting Us Against You by Fredrik Backman. This is the second book in his Beartown trilogy. I was thinking about reading Tress of the Emerald Sea, because that's also on my 24 books in 2024 list. But I'm just needing to read a physical book right now. I need to not read more digital books. I've been reading a lot of digital books. It's not like reading digitally is atrocious and books I read there suck or anything. I like all the books I've been reading there for the most part. It's just that like I do prefer physical reading. I feel like I haven't done enough of it, so I'm gonna start doing some physical reading to break up all of the digital reading I've been doing, and then we'll see where it goes. So I'll start this today, let you know my thoughts after, you know, the usual around a third of the way through the book. Okay? Hello. I really am in full Saturday morning weekend mode right now, but I am here to give you a little bit of an update because I am about a third, I think I'm like just under a third of the way through Us Against You. And as expected, I'm loving it. I love Fredrik Backman. His writing style is just like something I absolutely adore. And I have said this like so many times that at this point, like maybe I should, you know, stop saying it because like everybody already knows. But I really like adore his writing style and his characters, and I'm so glad I'm finally like jumping back into this series. This isn't a lighthearted series. You know, there's a lot of really heavy topics in Beartown that continue into Us Against You, but it's interesting to kind of see after some of the devastation that happens in the first book, how that's like carrying forward, and then how characters are like attempting to put back together something that maybe is never going to be the same. So it's like a very interesting read. I do also love with this series that you're following the whole town. You're jumping around into so many characters in Beartown and also in this book, and all of them are very well developed, and all of them have these interesting stories to follow that all link together to create the plot that you're reading. And I think it's just like a fantastic way of storytelling. It really encapsulates the feeling of the small town and the intricacies of all of those relationships. It's definitely like I'm loving it so far. My plan for today truly is to just read this book. Like, I don't have anything else on the docket. Maybe clean my kitchen, considering like that's looking not great right now and I should probably deal with that. But for the most part, like, I have decided that like tomorrow will be my productive weekend day, and today is going to be my sit around and read Fredrik Backman day. So like, that's what I'm going to be doing, you know? So I'll read some more of the book. I'll give you an update later today when I'm farther into it. I think this one is like a little over 400 pages, and I'm about 130 pages into it right now. So maybe somewhere around like the 270 pages mark, I'll come back to you, let you know my further thoughts. I do know like this is obviously like the middle book in a trilogy, and I feel like sometimes second books in 3-book series, I feel like sometimes have a struggle of setting up for a big finale without also just falling flat themselves because it's not the finale, you know? The first book really sets up a story for you. The third book obviously is the conclusion of that story and will have the highest... Oh my god. I'll have like the highest peak to it that will then like conclude, but the second book has to kind of just bridge the two of them and then like still be interesting and a solid story in its own right. So I feel like second books struggle, and I'm really hoping this one doesn't, and I have high hopes for this one. I would say so far it's definitely like 4 to 4.5 star range for me. I'm not quite feeling 5-star feels with it yet, but also like I'm pretty sure both of the other Fredrik Backman books I have read I've given 5 stars to, and then reread them and gave them 5 stars again. So like I would not be surprised if this ends up being a 5-star read for me, just because I love Fredrik Backman so much, you know? Gonna go read more of my favorite author and then let you know more of my thoughts, in which I will probably just continue to praise him. I'm now a little over 300 pages into Beartown. This is not Beartown, into Us Against You. So I read a bit more than I said I would, but it's because I really like, I find like Fredrik Backman has this kind of writing style, and his stories are just so intriguing that I can't put them down, which is like a very wonderful feeling as a reader. I just like love how well he portrays the gray in-betweens of situations in life, and like showing both sides of a story without feeling like devil's advocate way about that. It just shows the complexity of reality versus the black and white of how we think of things in our mind, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But I'm loving the book. I feel like there's a very high chance for me to give this 5 stars when I finish reading it, just because like I just love Fredrik Backman. I can't explain to you how much I love this man and his writing, okay? I can't help it. This is my weakness in life, and I'm okay with that. It's like I don't want to talk about the plot really at all, because this is of course the second book in a series, so like it can be very spoilery. So I feel like this whole portion of the vlog I've been speaking like extremely vaguely, but I am really liking how it's building the tension between the two kind of like groups that have been established, and then where this is going to lead into the third book. Where are we going with this? You know, like we've just kind of had a big reveal for the characters, and it's really added a lot to a situation that's already have a lot in it. So I'm very intrigued. Yeah, I want to see where it goes. I also like how you're seeing kind of all of the points, because you're following so many characters in the book. You really get to see everything that's making a situation. Like you can see who's pulling strings where and whose thoughts are manipulating situations, and I really love to see that. I find it really interesting, and like I said, Fredrik Backman makes characters that are like so full and complete and complex that it's wonderful to like to read this many characters, and it's surprisingly easy for me to keep track of them all. I think he makes them all such strong individuals that you have them all very clearly distinguished in your mind. And then even though there are so many characters, there are some very minor characters in the book that he just like doesn't give names to. Like there's one that he only refers to as, it's like the Spanish home owning politician or something. Like that's all he's ever referred to as. And the thing is that makes it easier to keep track of that extremely minor character throughout the book, instead of if his name was just like Tom, and then you had to come back chapters later and they're like Tom, and you're like, who's Tom? Versus if it's just the Spanish homeowning politician, you're like, I know exactly who you're talking about. So I think that's like a really smart thing that he does in this book, and it works very well. So I'm currently doing some laundry and I have some tea made, so I'm going to drink my tea and hopefully read the rest of this book while I'm finishing up my cleaning, and then I'll let you know my final thoughts, but I'm feeling very positive about them so far. Okay, so Fredrik Backman is officially 3 for 3 on writing books that make me cry. Obviously, I'm giving this 5 stars. This was so good, guys. It's like, the thing is too, that right from like the first page of the book, you know what's gonna happen, and then you still like are not ready for it, and then he writes it up into this way where like until the last second you don't know the full details of what's going to happen, even though you already know the broad strokes the entire time. And it's just like, this book was so good. There's so much heartbreak, but there's also so much care, but then there's like the revenge and anger and violence and camaraderie. Like, there's just like so much written into this book, and it's so good. And I cannot wait to read The Winners, which is the third and final book in this series. I definitely like am also gonna have to reread this at some point so I can annotate it the same way I did Beartown and also A Man Called Uwe. A Man Called Uwe is like one of, if not my favorite book, honestly. I adore that book. But yeah, every time I pick up a Fredrik Backman book, I'm like, why am I not picking up Fredrik Backman books more often when I know how much I love his writing and his stories and his characters, and I know he's like one of my favorite authors, yet I wait so long before I read more of his books. What's wrong with me? I don't know. But I'm really glad I finally got around to reading this book. Like I said, 5-star read. I have a very strong feeling that like the third book will probably also be 5 stars. It's just probably a 5-star series for me, honestly. And then I'll probably cry for the third book too, because, you know, I'm on a roll right now with the whole crying while reading Fredrik Backman books thing, so why stop here? Yeah, that's the vlog for the week. Just gonna end it on that depressing but wonderful note of I cried and I loved it. But I really I don't have much else to say. Like, I cried and I loved it. And I care so much about all of the characters in this town and in this book and this series. He just writes them so well. But yeah, if you liked the video, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up. Happened like me. Consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. Do let me know down below, how have you been with actually reading the TBR you set for yourself? Be honest, are you going to be succeeding before the end of the year? I have doubts about myself, but hopefully you're more successful than I am right now. But I am now 2 books closer, so I'll take what I can get. So with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.